Today's episode is an interview with my uncle, Tom Titkemeier, a retired Ohio pharmacist. I credit him with inspiring me to become a pharmacist. You're listening to the Pharmacist Voice podcast. Join me on my journey to become a voice actor. I alternate solo shows and interview shows. The solo shows are about my career change from pharmacist to voice actor. During interview shows, I talk to a variety of people who use their voices to advocate, educate, or entertain. Will I succeed in the voiceover industry? Subscribe and find out. Thank you for joining me for episode 3 of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm your host, Kim Newlove. In today's episode, I have an interview with my uncle Tom Titkemeier, a retired Ohio pharmacist. I credit him with inspiring me to become a pharmacist. Now, this episode was actually recorded in November of 2019 before I recorded any other episode. This is truly the first episode of the Pharmacist Voice podcast. I'm here today with Tom Titkemeier, my uncle, and we're going to have a little interview with him about why he became a pharmacist and a whole lot of other questions. Hi, Uncle Tom.
How are you today, Kim? It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm great. This is my first recorded podcast. I'm super excited.
And I'm super nervous.
All right. Well, just feel at home. This is going to be easy. I'm going to start off by asking.
Be gentle.
Will do. Let me ask you first, why did you become a pharmacist?
That's an interesting question. I started school. I didn't start in pharmacy. I was in sciences, and after a first year of college at the University of Toledo, I realized that I had to get a job sometime. So I had an older brother, 2 years ahead of me, was in the College of Pharmacy, and taking all the same classes he was, so it was an easy slide over to that, and I had no high motives at the time, but I've learned to appreciate my career path and use it for some interesting life work.
Awesome. And you went to the University of Toledo in Toledo, Ohio, right?
Yes.
Why did you pick UT, by the way?
Because everybody I knew went to BGSU, and that was too close to home. So I was able to live on campus. I was paying my own way, which is a difficult thing to do, and wanted to enjoy the college experience of being away from home. So I chose UT. I didn't have the ability to go further than that, and was quite naive. I was a country bumpkin, didn't know much about the big city. So it was good for me. It was a good choice.
Very good. And when you first graduated, where did you work?
I had been interning at, it was called St. Vincent's Medical Center in Toledo, inner city hospital, one of the larger hospitals. And I was able to do my internship while I went through school, which helped pay the bills of the education. So upon graduation, there was no job there. I did work briefly at the Toledo Hospital, and then I was offered a job back at St. Vincent's and knew all the landmines there and walked back into it. So I was able to work a rather long career in pharmacy, staying at the same place some 40 years, and I was blessed to be able to do that.
Awesome. And it was at St. V's that I shadowed you in 8th grade.
Goodness.
And yes, you inspired me to become a pharmacist.
Inspired or perspired? I don't know.
Inspired. And
okay.
You don't know this, but you are probably famous with a bunch of young people that you have never met. Because while I've been volunteering, or now I get paid to speak at the University of Toledo College of Pharmacy's pharmacy summer camp, I always tell the story about how when I was in 8th grade, I went to St. V's and I watched you work in your surgery pharmacy, and you let me see surgeries. And that was really cool for an 8th grader to be able to see, to come to class and say, hey, when I got to observe somebody and job shadow, I job shadowed my uncle and I got to see blood and guts. But what really...
And wear pajamas while at work.
And wear pajamas. And everybody thought I was a college student because I was at my full height by 8th grade. And I was so impressed with the type of work you did and how everybody worked together really well. The nurses and the doctors. And you had your little room that you were in and you knew how to make stuff. And it was cool.
Oh, that's good. I you never know what type of impression you leave on someone. And so I appreciate you saying that. I will leave it at that. We'll leave it at that.
Well, one of the other things that was really cool is that when it came to, when it came to me picking pharmacy school, I had no doubt that University of Toledo was right for me because you and Uncle Al and your wife, my Aunt Janet, had gone there. And so I actually had the right last name for a change.
Ah, yes. That's a difficult one, too. Interesting thing is I have 3 children, and none of them, between both my wife and I being pharmacists, none of my children are pharmacists. So did we drive them away from it? I'm not sure, Kim.
No, I don't know. I was impressed, though, for sure. I have really enjoyed my experience, but it's been really cool to have your support over the years, and especially when I was going to school. You asked me about professors that were still there that you had, Dr. Meese, for example, and it was just a cool experience to have that camaraderie and that support. And even as a young graduate from the pharmacy school, I was able to talk to you about issues related to the Toledo area, and you just knew people and you knew things and places and asked, are they still there? And it was cool.
It's an interesting thing. The evolution of pharmacy has been rather significant since I graduated. And for you to have some of the same professors, but they adapted their process to what was happening in pharmacy. It's an interesting, rapidly developing field.
And what kind of a degree did you get when you graduated?
My program was a 5-year program. So it was the Bachelor's of Pharmacy. I did not go on to pursue anything more. I was in the throes of raising a family and working, and would have loved to. The PharmD came on board, but I did not pursue that personally. Would have liked to have done that. And
I also got my 5-year bachelor's degree. So that hadn't changed. And I graduated in 2001. How about you?
1977, some 40-odd years ago.
Yeah. And did you ever think about switching while you were there at St. V's for those 40 years?
There's definitely peaks and valleys in your career, and life comes at you pretty fast. Through the good Lord's guidance, I was able to survive and got through some difficult times. The changing of careers, the changing of what you were involved with your children being in schools, and change is a thing you have to learn to deal with.
After 40, how many years did you retire?
It was about 40. Pretty much right on 40. I did retire. Definitely could have worked longer. I felt, both my wife and I have talked about this. You're pretty much at the top of your game. You're being effective. Why retire? I guess that's a difficult one, and that's a personal thing. We did attend a funeral where there were some other pharmacists there, and several people indicated they were going to work longer into their late 60s, early 70s. And through some of my other life experiences, I thought, you really don't know how much time you have. So we chose to get out of the actual workforce and try to do some other things. We focus on some mission work now that we participate in.
And when you say we retired, do you mean Aunt Janet retired at the same time, or was it right
she's
after?
A whole 9 months younger than me. And so I allowed her No, she chose to work a year beyond what I did. A lot of that is involving, healthcare post-working days. That gets expensive if you don't have, Medicare. So,
If you don't mind my asking, how old were you when you retired?
I was just shy of 65.
And did it feel right to retire at that age?
It was good. Certainly was capable of going longer. Again, it's a personal choice for everyone. Many people challenge me with, what are you going to do? And I always chuckled. Some of those things I never could do for the last 40 years, I would respond with. And so everyone has choices in their life, and that was just one that was right for me.
I don't know if you remember this, but when I was younger, you used to tease me that pharmacists never retire. They just die. Do you remember that?
Yeah, they just fade away. Yeah, I do remember those things. There were some cleverer ones, and I'm not recalling them right now, so I'll try to recall some of those. But it's certainly a good career. Physically, you're in generally a climate-controlled setting because we don't want the drugs to, decompose early because of difficult temperatures, high temperatures, and humidity. So physically, you're using your brain more than your arms and legs. And with all the technology today, it's amazing what you can do sitting in a laptop. You get some overuse injuries on your hands and carpal tunnel maybe, but that's not too bad.
I would agree. Yep. So what are you doing with your retirement? Are you still being a pharmacist somewhere, or did you completely give it up?
No, I've maintained my license. My wife and I both are heavily involved with working with Christian medical and dental on mission trips. We don't do it all year round, but when we can, we've financed it ourselves. And our goal is spreading the word of God to other parts of the world. We've gone to Central America. I've been to Beirut. We just went to the Gambia, which is in Africa, and it's a 97% Muslim country. So Christianity was something new that we were putting out to some of the people there. So it's been interesting. We use a medical team when we travel to see the people and then also preach the gospel. That's our goal there.
Now, as a pharmacist, though, what would you say your role is?
We actually are pharmacists on the trip. We take in our own drugs, medications. That's always interesting going through customs when you have suitcases full of medications. But we have physicians that are writing the prescription, and just to keep things simple or concise so that the people that are getting the prescriptions have good information on the prescriptions, we work as pharmacists.
And do you speak the language that everybody in that country speaks, or how do you communicate with the locals?
I am I'm just terrible at languages. My wife has a gift. She does well with Spanish, but we work with interpreters and have been blessed to have some incredible high school students in Central America we work with. In Africa, we've had people from the local church be our interpreters, even though the language of the Gambia is English. There was about 8 different dialects that had to be spoken, and that was challenging. I did learn the louder I spoke there, the better it went. That was kind of interesting. There was a T-shirt my wife found that it says, "I'm not shouting, I'm Gambian." So that was something I did learn.
When do you think you'll actually give up your license? So when are you going to throw in the towel and not renew it?
That's a difficult question. Right now, I'm enjoying what we do with mission work, so I'll maintain it. I'm physically able. Um, it is difficult to keep up with things when you're not working because you miss some of that nuanced information when you're on a job. So keeping up is difficult, but keeping your C's up, that'll be interesting. I don't know. Should a health crisis come, I might give it up then. But at this point, I'll try to maintain it for as long as I can.
So it is kind of true. Pharmacists don't retire. They do just die, right?
They just fade away.
And were you aware that you had inspired me to become a pharmacist and go to pharmacy school? Do you know that you were part of that decision?
That's a wonderful compliment. No, I can't say that I knew that. People are placed in your life sometimes and you don't fully know what influence you may have on them. So I appreciate you saying that. That is very flattering to me. We all have mentors that we've had in our lives, and it's interesting. You never know when you influence someone. So just by your being there, you can affect future outcomes. Again, I didn't know that positively, but thank you for mentioning that.
Well, you're welcome. I felt you deserved to know that. And I want you to know that I do talk to my students about you, and they love the story because everybody has somebody somewhere in their lives that's paid attention to them and shown them something that has either helped them know that this is right for me or no, I don't want that. And for me, you were that when it came to pharmacy.
Interesting. I just had a discussion with a personal friend the other day about the ability to listen. And as a pharmacist, you have to listen very quickly. Now, the person may be talking slowly, but you have to really listen to what they're saying so that you can advise them properly on their medications. And if they're asking for a recommendation on something, you have to listen. So your ability to listen to me, that's interesting. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone can be a pharmacist. So I think the better pharmacists that I worked with were always ones that could listen, hear you, give concise information, and they would give you concise answers back. It has to be timely when you're working, whether it be in a hospital or retail. You don't have time to mess around. You got to move. So ability to listen and focus is very, very important in pharmacy.
I agree. Now, as we wrap this up, I want to ask you one final question. And I know that you don't speak directly to my students, but here's the question. If you had to say something, some words of inspiration or advice to a pharmacy student or a college student or high school student considering a career in pharmacy or the pharmaceutical sciences, what advice would you give them?
That's difficult. Perseverance is huge because you can get knocked down pretty easily. The people getting into the schools, I would not get into pharmacy school today because I was not a great student. But I did have the ability to persevere. And I think that's something we all need to focus on. There's a lot of, in today's society, we are creating so many protections for people. Sometimes kids are surrounded by a helicopter mom or dad. So when you're a student, if you're going into whatever the discipline would be, you have to have that inner perseverance and focus to maintain your path if you really want to do any of those things, be it pharmacy or whatever.
That's good advice. Thanks, Uncle Tom, for being with me here today on this podcast. And If anyone wants to reach you, would you be willing to give your email address out?
Sure. The easiest way would be it's my last name, which is the same as Kim's earlier.
My maiden name?
Yeah, her maiden name. But it's Titkemeier at ameritech.net. And they can certainly contact me.
Very good. Well, thanks again, Uncle Tom.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to the Pharmacist Voice podcast with me, your host, Kim Newlove. Please visit thepharmacistvoice.com to subscribe and read the show notes.